So let's talk about the entertainment industry. Oh, if you can't tell these days, I don't actually use glasses, so I just sort of removed it. Anyway, don't you just hate it? Corporate media will do everything that it can to appeal to the lowest common denominator, producing generic mediocre garbage after generic mediocre garbage. These big corporations will do everything they can to make sure that you buy their product, and you continuously buy their product. If you don't buy these products, they're gonna have the media and its rabid supporters to call you all sorts of names and shame you as an immoral person for not consuming their product. But that's just the beginning. There are also the censorship that is happening to lots of fictional content. A lot of these censorships are done by companies who have the misguided expression that they have the moral high ground on the entertainment landscape, butchering a lot of these products for the sake of not offending the loudest of minorities that show about as much interest to the product as a discarded toy off of a really spoiled brat. And yet, these companies still cater into these spoiled crybabies anyway, because bad PR doesn't give them the big bucks, despite the fact that these spoiled crybabies don't buy their games and only complain about them on Twitter for social credits. If all of that sounds depressing, don't worry, I get it. You don't want your entertainment to get ruined by these moral crybabies or butchered by corporate greed to the point where it's reduced to the same mediocre garbage as everything else. Neither do I for that matter, but the thing is, I have lost all hope towards modern entertainment being good. There are occasional blips of brilliance and effort on the modern entertainment market, but not convincing enough for me to say that you should all be hyped towards the newest, latest, and greatest. But just because modern entertainment is mostly garbage doesn't mean that the world is ending. It doesn't mean that there's no more good entertainment in the world. The truth is, a lot of the stuff that you hear from me and a lot of the news and YouTubers talking about these news about censorship and corporate greed and all of that are almost always going to be affecting the newer stuff and most likely mainstream stuff. It's rare to see a big company going after their older stuff saying, yep, you're not allowed to enjoy this anymore. They only ruin the older stuff by making sequels or remakes that you can just pretend to not exist, like how Disney pretends that the many Star Wars extended media before their stupid sequel trilogy are not canon. Well, in that case, we're just gonna pretend that those aren't canon and pretend that Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 are canon. So no matter what Disney did to destroy the current Star Wars, you still have the old Star Wars stuff to enjoy and appreciate. There's only one time that I recall where a company decides that you cannot play the old games anymore, and that company was Blizzard for deciding that the reforged version of Warcraft 3, as in the garbage version, is the one that people should only care about. You cannot purchase the original Warcraft 3 through any of the official links. If it weren't for all the digital blackbeards of the internet, we wouldn't be able to have access to the original, untainted, and still good version of Warcraft 3. And since most of these news are only going to be affecting the newer stuff, you really don't have to feel so anxious about it. Let's talk about these two news, for example. Oh no, Sony is censoring anime games for their violence without understanding the context of the story, and is probably gonna have a huge monopoly towards the anime industry as a whole, as they're buying anime studios and streaming services left and right. That is so terrible, and I feel so worried about the state of the anime industry as a whole. Well, you would be worried if you only care about animes that are produced under their supervision, and animes that are more mainstream. Sony has Aniplex, which spawned the anime studio A1 Pictures, which produced quite a lot of animes, including Anthem of the Heart, one of my favorite animes of all time, and one that I talk about extensively in a video that got shadow banned by YouTube because screw you, YouTube. While they do produce well-known stuff, they're not exactly the only anime studio in the entire world. And even if Sony owns every anime studio in the market, there's an entire backlog of anime and manga series spanning decades after decades, filled with lots of good stuff that will last you for an entire lifetime. A lot of them are not butchered by politics or the increasingly garbage modern standards. So I really don't see why anyone should be anxious or worried. Yeah, sure, Sony, go and destroy the entire anime industry for all I care. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an entire backlog worth of animes and mangas that I haven't gone through that hasn't been touched by your corporate overlords. Oh, what's that? You got $0 from me. Oh, that's terrible, Sony. If only there's an industry that you can stop ruining and animes and games that you can stop censoring. The most amazing part of entertainment and fictional stories in general, such as books, comics, films, TV series, video games, etc., is the fact that these products are never a monopoly. Oh, sure, the platform sharing them could be a monopoly. Sure, these companies producing them can be a monopoly. Sure, social media in general can be a monopoly, but the products themselves are not. There are so so much alternatives that appeal to many different people from many different genres that will suit you so much better than the mainstream crap that people generally produce. One that deserves your money and one that deserves much more support than any of these corporate garbage. I mean, why do you have to beg for Ubisoft for another Assassin's Creed game with a female protagonist, especially when the company has been exposed for harassment against their female employees, which I talk about in this video? There are many games out there in the past few years with great female protagonists and interesting stories to accompany them in their journey and developed by people who actually care about their employees. Go support those games rather than begging for Ubisoft for another mediocre garbage. Unfortunately, there are many good reasons why we should feel anxious. The problem isn't necessarily the stuff that's being censored. That's just a symptom that highlights the real problem, and that real problem is the changing standards of our society. Things that used to be not so offensive before are offensive now. Things that shouldn't be offensive are now considered offensive. And what better way to reflect that sentiment than looking at the current year's stuff and compare them to the stuff from the older years? But then again, society has never been great, especially towards all the weebs out there, so this isn't really anything new. What is new is the fact that the stuff that we like are now getting more and more mainstream. The mainstream audiences are gonna take a slice of the pie by censoring and reducing what makes these things so great in the first place. Unfortunately, we as the consumers of these fictional content don't have a lot of control on who consumes them. We can't gatekeep people out of our hobbies forever, especially when the internet just opens the gate for everyone to enter. We can't do much about the changing cultural and moral standards of our society, so it's pretty much inevitable that at one point in time, the hobby that you love and used to be niche will get into the mainstream eye, to the point where it has to be butchered for the mainstream consumption. These moral busybodies, including the dinosaurs from the past, are doing their best to prevent us from consuming the media that we love. There's gonna be a point in the future where they will criminalize you for merely consuming the stuff that you like, and those stuff will get banned because they don't jive with the cultural standards of our society. But here's the thing, you're not the only one fighting against these moral busybodies. You're not the only one who likes the stuff that you like and want those stuff to be preserved for the future generations. There's no reason for you to be sad or anxious, because no matter what these moral busybodies do to any of the recent entertainment, you're still gonna have a lifetime worth of entertainment in your backlog. And if the law dictates that you are not allowed to enjoy the entertainment that you like, then screw those laws. If a distant future dictates that video games are about as illegal as drugs, then sign me up for the freaking mafia. Isn't that a cool idea? Shimoneta, except instead of porn, it's good entertainment. I think some parts of our fear arise from the fact that we as human beings are always looking forward for something new. And when those new things get screwed up, we only feel disappointed about it. We feel anxious, bitter, and depressed because there's gonna be one slight bit of chance that the new stuff is gonna be ruined. It can be ruined by censorship, corporate greed, moral guardians on Twitter, all sorts of stuff. So allow me to change your perspective. Instead of looking forward to something new that we have no idea on whether or not is gonna be good, how about we look backwards to something that already exists that we already know is good? Take a look back on the past few years or even the past few decades. There are loads and loads of fictional stuff being released every week or even every day. You can't seriously tell me that you have consumed every piece of media from the past few years, let alone decades. There are many old films that I haven't watched, animes that I haven't watched, mangas that I haven't read, video games I haven't played, all of that stuff from the past that I can waste my entire life with and still not have enough of them. And no one can ever change or censor those stuff. Even when they try to censor them, we will always find the original copy somewhere, one that wasn't tainted by modern standards. And this is why I highly encourage people to learn how to archive your works. Having a physical copy of a media is always great. The internet can find a way to censor the digital version, but you still have the untainted physical copy. And even if you don't have a physical copy, having a digital copy locally is better than nothing. Learn how to rip Blu-rays, learn how to rip game cartridges, learn how to sail the high seas and protect yourself with the latest private networks. And most importantly, support the creators of new stuff that are actually making the good stuff. Do whatever it takes to tell these corporate media that we do not accept your butchering and your treatment of these fictional media that we love. They hate you when you don't give them money. They hate you when you don't care about their product. They hate you you when you are a smart consumer who know how to sail the high seas and realize that we don't have to rely on you. They hate you when you are confident enough to tell these corporate media that we don't want your garbage product. We don't want it to be censored. If you keep on doing this, we're not giving you money. Plain and simple. Oh sure, these companies will not change, and they will never change. Their only obligation is to make products to make money, and they're gonna make sure that those products go to as many mass market appeal as possible, even if they have to butcher them and tear them into pieces. So why do we have to feel so bitter and anxious about it? They're not the only company in the world making products, and they're not the only one who sell those products. There are many reasons for us to be bitter and anxious about this world, especially in current year. But no matter what happens with the new media, there are loads of alternatives out there, and old media is still good. You probably haven't even finished it, so you go do that and you might be able to get through the entire life not realizing that the entertainment industry is being ravaged and destroyed by censorship and politics and corporate greed. But at least you die happy knowing that you finish all of your backlogs.